Welcome to NASDAQ Trade Talks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in TradFi, digital assets, technology, and financial planning. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me on the desk this afternoon, we have Jared Fink, CEO of Cosmic Wire, Solo Ceesay, co-founder and CEO of Calaxy. We also have Anthony Georgiadis. He's general partner with Innovating Capital and co-founder of Pastel Network. We're here to discuss Web3 innovation and blockchain solutions, the future of digital entertainment, and data and privacy in the metaverse. Gentlemen, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks. Certainly a good day to have everyone on. We have Bitcoin hitting over 64,000. Before we get into that, let's go around the table quickly. Jared, start with you. Where does Cosmic Wire sit within the Web3 ecosystem?
Yeah, thanks so much. Jared Fink, I'm the CEO and founder of Cosmic Wire. We've taken a very kind of infrastructure approach, building what we think are the building blocks of spatial compute and spatial web, and using Web3 as basically a ledgerized system to go and containerize data, creating provenance and chain of custody around keystrokes, behavioral-based actions, and advertising. Our whole thesis as a company is that spatial web and spatial compute is the future of how the internet will be consumed, and we've built what we call the OS, or the baseline infrastructure, to allow all companies to come inside of this space and scale whatever applications they have in Web3.
All right, and Solo, you've been on with us before, so give us a refresher.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here. My name is Solo Ceesay, CEO and co-founder of Calaxy, and we are the social wallet. I'm a builder within the Web3 ecosystem, built on the Hedera network. And the best way to describe us is we're a non-custodial wallet with real-world utility. What we've been known for are creator tools. And so in our wallet, you're going to notice our interface is a little bit different, more accustomed to a traditional social experience. You'll have your home feed, a profile, your messages, and all your assets with you as well. And when you navigate to a content creator's profile, they can productize and sell a lot of different experiences in their shop that settle on USDC, but you can also use that same interface to fire over some crypto to your friend as easy as a text within our DM system, within our chat manager. And so, yeah, non-custodial wallet with real-world utility. Glad to be here.
All right, Anthony.
Nice. I'm general partner at Innovating Capital. We're a Web3 focus, or I focus on Web3. We are a deep tech fund. We specialize really in providing a lot of hands-on support for the networks that we participate in, whether that's running validators, being part of active governance, staking, etc. We also cover things like cybersecurity, enterprise infrastructure, digital health. And one of the projects that we've quasi-incubated that I'm very involved in is Pastel Network, which is a L1 that's focused on application-specific infrastructure across decentralized storage and AI services and solutions.
You know, it's interesting. It seems to be the story so far for 2024. Everything's focused around Bitcoin, which is just one function on these networks. Let's talk about Web3 innovation and blockchain solutions, because it's not just for digital assets. There's other areas like, you know, the future of entertainment as an example.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one of the things too that you touched on that's fascinating is that Bitcoin itself for a while has really played in the ecosystem on the side of really being kind of a digital asset, safe haven, commodity type feature. Then you have the world of Web3, which is all of these token-based economies, really more enterprise applications that are decentralized and immutable by nature. What's interesting, and it's kind of led to some of the recent price movement, is Bitcoin's found its footing, whether it's ordinals, some L2 scaling solutions, to really play a part of that broader Web3 world. And we're seeing a lot of innovation really within the Bitcoin space as well. So a lot of Bitcoin holders for a while viewed that as a pure free call option, that Bitcoin could make its way into the more token economic aspect of the Web3 world. We're really starting to see that play out.
Yeah, and you know, I want to get into this with you, Jared, for a moment here. It really does allow individuals, whether we're talking about the content creator economy and so forth, to have more control over their personal data. So I want to go there for a moment here as it relates to personal data and security. How is Web3 innovating to further that?
I think Web3 is it's a direct pushback to basically the kind of click funnel syndrome we've been living in for the last 20 years of internet. It was really kind of the genesis thought and the foundational thought of the internet, of this interconnected network where we could all be trading data but also own our provenance, and it just never happened that way. We kind of got put into these islands where we were basically licensing back our IP. I come heavily out of entertainment, and then I also have a tech background, so I'm one of those weird kind of science artists that I've always been walking the lines of how do we manage, you know, creative provenance or IP or just ourself, you know, with our own kind of like a sovereign self, as opposed to like how do we license it out and track those royalty systems. And so I think blockchain is the future of all this. We're allowing people to come in, control their entity, have everything in a transparent ledger, containerize items. This is everything from your assets to your bank accounts, deeds to your house, your medical records. I mean, anything can be running through these systems. And it's about how do we establish a zero trust environment to allow people to both control their data and also have an output to go and monetize their data at the same time. And that's really what we've been building from the start of this, is just creating a system to allow people to come and control their autonomy, control their asset base, but also be able to license their data out to other people. Because the thing that's going to come out of this, especially with AI and the way that we're doing all the kind of derivative works off these things, is how are we going to track this IP? What is the DRM system, ISRCs, however we're doing PRO and mechanical rates in this kind of Web3 space. And Web3 allows for the perfect vessel for that. If we hash things correctly and we do this correctly, this creates a bigger economy for everyone on both sides of the system.
Yeah, actually, you bring up a good point even too with the advent of AI and all the different types of what we've been seeing in the world, where we live in this click-bake world, the importance of provenance and being able to understand the trusted source. The immutability of the blockchain really surfaces that up to the end user, and people don't really think about how important or how impactful it really is to making sure that we can understand and see and validate or understand if things are authentic in a world that's getting more and more difficult to really understand and trust the source of the information you might be seeing on the internet as well.
Yeah. And back to community building as well, Anthony, when it comes to social interaction, entertainment, education, it's not just the Web3 world. Web2 and legacy companies are also starting to take note with this. So what are your thoughts in terms of bridging that gap, or what can Web2, and I know you have thoughts on this, what can Web2 learn from Web3?
The thing that's amazing about Web3, and at the crux of what it is, it's peer-to-peer transactions and networks. We're seeing a massive disruption in really how businesses operate, right? You had this traditional kind of one-sided payment model where I might go out and pay for a specific good or service, whether that's a movie ticket or a concert ticket, and I'm getting that service in exchange, but there's no kind of residual value that I take along with me. So if you look in the world of Web3, and you can leverage an NFT to gain access to a specific community, to gain access to that concert, and that NFT might derive some sort of value or utility after that concert took hold, whether that's access to a creator's exclusive release of a new song or movie or whatever it might be, or some specific access to a Discord community channel where you can engage with other creators. And we are seeing Web2 players that are starting to look at that and try to capture that, like Nike, for example. They released a new collection that leveraged an online Web3 community to really come together and vote on a new design for a sneaker that they then went out and brought to production, which is amazing. So, one, it's that kind of core business model, but then it's the other side where it's, where can I basically have my user as fully engaged in every aspect of the network cycle as possible, where it's not necessarily just an intermediary that's extracting value, but the underlying community member themselves are a key aspect of the value chain itself over time. And I think if Web2 companies don't necessarily take grasp of this, they're going to be at the demise of losing a significant part of really the valuable creator economy that's going to really start to really flow towards Web3 and Web2 businesses that are capturing onto this, like Nike's.
I think the one thing to even call out on that as well is when you think about the general understanding, or I guess the general sentiments from Web2, big enterprise, when it comes to these technologies, a lot of times they see it as a more efficient way to do what we're currently doing. But I don't necessarily think, I would encourage, and I think the industry as a whole is encouraging Web2 and big enterprise to look at this as not only a better way to do things, but a way to do things that were previously not possible. Right? And so when you think about what the idea of the NFT and why it was so revolutionary, or why it is revolutionary, especially when it comes to the world of getting creators paid or getting auditors paid and enforcing things like royalties on digital artwork, which was previously impossible when you think about the world of Web2, it's really thinking about how this technology can be leveraged. And we're so early in the days of this nascency of the technology to really understand what its best use cases are. Yeah. And it spans much more than just doing things in a better, more efficient way than we've had in the past. But taking that a step further. And there's certain examples of that we're starting to even see in the world of Web3. I am actually fortunate to be a part of an advisor to Karate Combat, which is a sports league that's actually turned itself into a DAO, and people can actually vote on fighter. It's a combat sports league. They can vote on fighter matchups, and they can, sort of play and gamify the sports experience in a way that, sports betting previously wasn't really able to do in the same way, and giving control and power into the back into the hands of fans, which is really enhancing that, fan experience in a way that creates, even more fandom than was previously possible with the tools that existed in the world of Web 2.
Yeah, no, it's really good stuff. I think the hardest part communicating to people is getting them to understand that it wasn't a light switch moment. When we say, the gap between Web 2 and Web 3, it's the same thing as the gap between Web 1 and Web 2. It wasn't like Thursday in 2004, we turned the light switch and went to Web 2. Like, it's this constant kind of evolution of technology. And once people understand that, my very first job in tech was for SAP implementation in 2000. Like, it was the very kind of start of like JWT tokens and ledger-based technology. And when we started doing this, I went to the same place. Like blockchain is the perfect kind of table-based system to plug APIs in from any existing system, and that can be Delta Miles, it can be Starbucks rewards points, it can be POS systems for Nordstrom's, it can be any kind of automated system can plug into this to create containerized function for ledger output. And so we started building out, basically white label table software. And we got into things that I've never been around in my life. We're doing global commodities now between governments through one of our companies called SmartBank, and it was just a system that needed a ledger. And really what blockchain, I think, does more than anything is we're establishing a system of standards for systems that have none. And this goes across all mediums. In music, using DRMs for PROs and ASCAP and BMI and CSAC, it is a complete just monstrosity of a thing to navigate as an artist, because you have all of these middle people and all of these people that are trying to obfuscate limits. And what this does is it puts transparent collection points into a ledger, right, that allows everyone to make more money. And once you kind of get people across that hump and they all understand the efficiencies of what it's going to do for baseline economy, everyone gets on board, because right now everyone's terrified of this stuff because, the scare tactic is that this is going to put everyone out of business and everyone's going to lose their jobs. But the truth is it's not that. We're scaling efficiencies. We're upping like the efficacy across the board, as a society. And that's really what I think Web3 is at its core.
So Jared, stay with me for a moment here, because since it's decentralized in nature, it's a self-sovereign identity model, as you pointed out in your notes here. So how can you ensure privacy? How can you ensure security? How can you ensure authenticity of what you're exchanging, whether it's music, art, concert tickets?
Yeah, I mean, so that was our first kind of hurdle, that we attempted to cross. And to say that we've solved it is, a misnomer. Everything's approaching zero in efficacy, and anyone in cybersecurity knows that. There is no like bulletproof. But this is better, right? We were putting people through, KYC, KYB, AML requirements at a SOC 2 compliance level for banking software, if we're doing banking software. So everyone comes into these walled gardens where you have to have these soul-bound identities to even function inside of it. And then we're running Ledger alongside of those users, right? So we're
endless identities.
Endless identities, right? And our identity patent that we came up with, it obfuscates. So every time the user does something, it's actually generated a new identity on the outside. So it's completely anonymous inside the system. But from the inside out, you have that entire CSV output of everything that you've done in every keystroke in every ledger-based item. And it's really powerful stuff. For advertising, this is the most powerful behavioral-based analytics system that's ever been. We're not predicting anymore. I can see what you're doing, but we can see it as a variable, not as an individual, right? So it's more like geofenced macro data. Like in this block, we can see what 20,000 people are doing at any moment in time, and what's working and what isn't working, because what we're moving into is an augmented kind of advertising value prop where people have these NFTs, right? I mean, that word's been completely ruined just from all the stuff that went on, but they're just digital assets, right? It's some kind of like key or linkage system, and that value can go around to all kinds of things. If you have this loyalty rewards program, maybe it works in Starbucks, maybe it also works in Sears or any other store. Like, there's lots of ways that this stuff is going to be monetized, and all of this gets put on Ledger, and all of this gets maximized because everyone can see the same thing. And that's where the synergy happens. But this is a true zero trust environment. Like, inside of these identity systems, we don't have access, the government doesn't have access, the licensors don't have access. The only person that has access is you, and you are the only person that can access those systems. And that's how it should be. We should be controlling our proxy and our identity and our IP, because in this world that we're stepping into, every user is a creator. We've already seen it with Instagram and Facebook. We're getting to the place where everyone is that. Right? If you have 10,000 people following you, you're selling shampoo, because you're using shampoo, you're selling shampoo, and that's your monetization, and you should be compensated for that, not trying to pull scraps back from this larger platform that took all of your proxy.
Well, Anthony, I think a big part of it too is interoperability. We've seen significant advances with that. It certainly feels over the past 2 to 3 years, certainly on the institutional financial side of it, that the key to it, and that was always the concern in the beginning, will these blockchains be able to interoperate? And it seems as if the improvement has happened there.
Definitely. There's a few things there, right? The future of Web3 is certainly interoperability. There are key advantages to having different types of layer 1, L0s, whatever they might be, that obviously provide a different level of services or support, right? Solana is great in terms of speed, maybe not the best in terms of on-chain data storage. You have certain blockchains that sacrifice one for the other. And being able to have blockchains that really can interact will take us to the next level where we can achieve the most sophisticated sorts of applications or economies that can live in a completely trustless manner. And I think the key issue that we've had over the last several years is how do we achieve that sort of communication between one blockchain and another in the most trustless way possible? Because if the state of Solana and the state of Bitcoin are completely trustless and independent in their own right, cross-communication is a huge challenge to preserve those key characteristics and qualities. What we've been excited about over the last 12 to 18 months has been a significant amount of overall innovation that's really focused on native bridging and interoperability. You look at a project like Injective Protocol. They have one of the best pure native bridges across their core Tendermint blockchain-based system and Ethereum. Completely stateless, completely trustless, and I think we're going to continue to see more and more of that improvement moving forward. As you said, it's not 0 to 1. It takes a tremendous amount of time. And we're getting closer and closer to that point where users won't even know if they're trading an NFT or whatever it might be. It might be settled on Solana, it could be locked up as collateral on Ethereum, whatever, but they're using that key or that value to interact with Web2 businesses, digital-based economies, whatever it might be. And that's really the future that we're excited about.
Yeah, that's a key part of the user experience anyway. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't want to have to think about the technology and the infrastructure that goes behind it. You just want it to function, and you get from point A to point B in the most efficient, safe manner.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, it's honestly, funny, there's the saying, it's like if, everyone had to be an engineer to drive a car, a lot of people would be walking places. I'm sure this guy might actually be able to build a car, but in all seriousness, like when you think about this technology, it really speaks to how early we really are. Like talking about, different layer ones when at the end of the day, the people out there are never gonna know these things, right? And I think taking it even a step further is, in our space, it's really important for us as builders to ask ourselves and ask deep questions, philosophies about the ways in which the user experience exists within the world of Web3, right? See, remembering your public key, having to send crypto. A lot of times if you ask your friend, when was the last time you used crypto to pay your friend back for anything? It probably was entirely too long for us to be sitting here at NASDAQ at Trade Talks talking about crypto, when peer-to-peer payments is one of the best use cases, if I'm not mistaken, of the technology. Right? And so when you think about that wallet experience, how difficult, really asking ourselves, how do we get to parity, and again, kind of like I was speaking about earlier, an enhanced experience that we would get in Web 2, right? When it's almost mind-numbingly easy to send fiat from one person to another at this point. But in crypto, it's not that. Right? And so we got to ask ourselves, does the wallet experience, does the experience that we got that sold us on this technology, the principles that got us here, may not be principles that people even really care about. The libertarian minds, all these different things. Owning your data is important. Yeah. We should own our data. And in other parts of the world, it's paramount that you own your data. But here, in other parts of the world, in different parts of the world generally, sometimes you have the luxury of not having to care. Right, but potentially we're moving into a world where it's really important where we all care, and so educating, not just ourselves on building better products so that we can welcome the next 100 million people in here, as Bitcoin approaches all-time highs. But on top of that is really thinking about moving that experience forward and really getting to a better world, not just parity with the world that we have today.
So Jared, in the last minute here, when does this become ubiquitous? And we're not even thinking about getting to the next level of Web3 where there is mass adoption, if you will, outside of the digital asset space.
Yeah, I think, again, it's a rapid acceleration. This is if you think about the speed of this compared to like the first Silicon Valley boom, we've gone through like 4 or 5 significant up and crashes in crypto since in the last couple of years. It's been absolutely insane. But I think kind of what you were talking about earlier, and that was the same approach we took, is the only way that this happens is by connecting everything. Like everyone built kind of islands in this idea of decentralization, and that's kind of antithetical to it. We focused on building bridges. So we have concepts and patents like interchain messaging, exactly what you're talking about. How do we talk to all chains at the same time so people don't even have to know or care? Because all chains do have different utilities and values, the same reason that some people buy Ford or some people buy a Chevy. Like, you shouldn't be forced to use Ford coin in Ford and Chevy coin in Chevy. There has to be some kind of transition point. That's the whole thesis behind interchange. So I believe in this thing called like centralized decentralization. Basically, there has to be a center, there has to be some kind of focal point, and that's literally what I think blockchain is doing. Is we already have interchange in finance. You know, when yen is for USD at that moment in time, I think we are developing the exact same thing of interchange of data, where we're creating a valid point of moment of transaction in data point. And so we can use things like for our technology example, we use Solana, exactly like you were talking about, because of the transactions per second, to go and manage all the keystrokes, but we use different chains for data points or storage, or if it's IFPS, et cetera. All of those things can work together because that's what we built. These aren't individual programs. So the answer to your question is, this stuff becomes mainstream when all of the technology is happening behind the curtain and people don't have to pay attention to it. Because right now people are seed phrases and MetaMask and their eyes glaze over and no one has any idea what the hell anyone's talking about, and it doesn't matter, right? I mean, you made the joke, but it's not a joke. Like, people want to drive the Ferrari. They don't care how it's put together, right? I mean, and that's a real thing, and that's where we're at right now. And so our entire thing has been educating top-level infrastructure distributors from the top down and say, this is how you maximize your systems using this. You don't have to understand anything about how this is working. The same reason you don't know how Visa works right now. If you ask people to dismantle that system, no one knows, but everyone uses it every day, and that's what we're on the path to do, and I think it's right there.
And we'll leave it at that on a positive note. Appreciate the insight, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me from MarketSite. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at NASDAQ.